Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are watching us from. So, tonight we will have an interesting topic. I'm sure many of us, nung bata tayo, there were things we would collect, di ba? Kunyari, comics, matchbox, trading cards like those of NBA players, more recently, yung mga Pokemon. But we would just collect it. Now we're going to have somebody who will tell us how these collectibles can actually be turned into cash. But before that, let me give a brief introduction of our guest. He's a graduate of industrial engineering from LaSalle and spent almost 20 years with Caltex, first in sales, and then eventually he was managing his own Caltex station, and then decided to change career and also spent about 13 years as a 7-Eleven franchisee. But aside from that, you will see that he is really business minded. He's also dabbled in other businesses like hair salon, restaurants, auctions, property investments, and so on and so forth. So, hindi ko na patatagalin pa. Let me bring on board our guest for tonight, Peter Ungson.
Hi, good evening. I'm Peter Ungson, and tonight we'll be dwelling in the very interesting world of collectibles.
Oh, Peter, let's start kasi I'm sure people will
Yeah,
have a lot of questions, no? If you
sure.
notice, I in the introduction I was talking about things that I'm sure many of us were collecting when we were younger.
Yeah.
Matchbox, comics, trading cards. So I guess first question I'd like to ask would be how does one determine which collectible class to enter and how did you start?
All right. Very good question to ask. Siyempre, yung most important when before you do start collecting stuff is to really see yung ba yung gusto mo. Are you really interested in it, or is it something you can do for the long haul, di ba? Kasi kung parang sumasama ka lang sa uso, baka hindi ka rin mag-enjoy. The most important part here is to enjoy what you're doing, and at the same time, keeping these items for the long haul, and hopefully in the future, earn from it. Kasi yung pinaka-importante dito, yung time element. These things do not appreciate in value immediately, definitely not. So yun yung unlike, let's say, in stocks or forex, which you can buy and sell immediately and earn from it. Ito mga collectibles, there's that time element. So what do I mean by this? Usually a collectible becomes collectible pagka nagkakaroon siya ng second wind, yung tawag na nila. So, what do I mean by second wind? Just like my kid, si RR, who is now 21 years old. Uh, Back in the day, di ba, meron uso sa atin yung text. Di ba? So, nawala yan sa uso dahil nagkaroon na ng mga Game and Watch and those things. And then surprisingly, when he was in grade school, nauso bigla yon. So, ibang version, but still text. Diba? So, for the people who kept these items, nagkaroon ng big rush, especially for the adults. Kasi nakikita nila yung anak nila, uy, I had something like that before. O nga, no? Parang magandang makabili niyan ulit dahil yun yung namimiss ko. So those people who kept them in maybe a shoebox or somewhere hidden dun sa kanilang mga closet were able to post this online and definitely kumita sila, especially those na really kept in pristine condition. So yun yung parang gist of things that people must take into consideration before starting a hobby or investing in collectibles. Two things yun.
I think that's a very important distinction to make. No, you use the term hobby, which
right?
means you're right. It has to be something that is a passion. It's not something necessarily that you are engaging in for the sole purpose of making money. It
Right,
could be something that can generate money later on, but that shouldn't have been the main reason why you entered into it.
correct. So for me, I started collecting because of the prodding of my father, stamps. So local stamps, and then it morphed into international stamps. So I still have them neatly packed in albums hidden in my closet. So I have not checked yung condition nila. However, recently when I was checking online, ang dami nga din mga naghahanap ng mga original and mint condition mga Philippine stamps. So yun yung mga things to consider when you're collecting. Uh, Siyempre, when you're collecting at the start, mura lang yan eh. Dahil, di ba, sabi ko nga sa inyo, that's the time when you buy kung uso siya. Mura lang yan, di ba? So usually some people would buy actually two items. One item is the item that they play with, and the second item is the item that you keep still locked in the box and hopefully kept in a cool, dry place na hindi siya naaarawan o naiinitan. So that item, hopefully after a couple of years or maybe 10, 15 years, definitely mag-appreciate in value. So things to consider also. Uh, yung item na kinokollect nyo, number one, dapat yun din yung interest ninyo or parang ini-enjoy ninyo. Number two, usong-uso siya. Di ba? Something that most people play with currently and something that is very uh, expendable or disposable. Why do I say that? Bakit expendable and disposable? These are the things kasi na hindi mo naiisip immediately. Kasi, di ba, ini-enjoy mo. Parang yung text, ini-enjoy mo siya, nilalaro mo siya. After a few weeks or months, di ba, may parang gutay-gutay na siya eh. However, 15, 20 years down the line, biglang maiisip mo, oh nga, I really enjoyed playing with text before. And I'd like to show my kid or child how to play it. However, wala ka na mahanap yung mga circa ng text cards na nilalaro mo dati. And then you start looking for one. So, since, sabihin natin, 20 years since you were a kid, now, kahit pa paano, kumikita ka na, may pera ka na, you have disposable income to spend on something that you really enjoyed when you were a kid. However, yung point ko nga kanina, something that is expendable or disposable. Kokonting tao kasi yung nagtago nun eh. Di ba? Kasi, yun nga, when you're a kid, o nga, play with it, medyo nagasgas na, medyo gutay-gutay na siya. What do? You just throw it away. You don't keep it. Diba? But yung nga, yung time element, 15, 20 years down the line, isipin mo, nga, no, nakakamiss niya nga yung text na yun. Then you could even imagine all the characters that were there. And you'd really like to get your hands on another or a new set or kung pwede, brand new. So, yun yung mga hinahanap ng mga collectors. Yung tawag nilang new old stock, NOS, new old stock, still in the box or preferably yung nga, yung mga sealed pa. Yun yung mga talagang really command the highest price. New old stock, still in the box and preferably sealed pa.
Now, that's true because I remember one of my friends from the States actually, he has a collection of Marvel figurines. And you're
Oh,
right, he would buy two. One is what he would let his kid play with, the other one is just kept in the box inside the shelf. And
right.
then, hopefully over time, it appreciates. So, but it's also hit or miss. So some of them have appreciated in value.
Right.
Some have basically remained the same. So I guess in terms of deciding which particular, let's say, which figure to buy, that's also hit or miss because that's also subjective. It's a function of what's the market looking for,
Yep.
which I guess
Yep.
brings brings me to another point which you had mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Given that to be able to maintain the quality of the collectibles, do they need to be kept in a certain type of room? Hindi naman siguro temperature controlled room, but 'di ba? Because let's say like if it's paper, pag
Yeah.
nanilaw na yung comics, the
Mhm.
price of the comic will be very different when the paper has turned yellow as opposed to if it's still relatively pristine and white. So are there any special instructions or care that you need to do for your collectibles?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, yung usually kept in a cool, dry place. So make sure na yung pinaglalagyan ho ninyo ng mga collectibles ninyo, hopefully sealed po siya. So madami na ho ngayon uso yung mga plastic boxes na may cover tapos nalalock dun sa gilid. So yun, that would suffice actually. And some would even, let's say, for comics, meron kang plastic sleeve na pwedeng ipasok yung, yung mga comics so that the pages are crisp, hindi folded o walang mga tear, etc., etc. So, yun po yung mga ginagawa ho nila just to keep them in a condition na pristine. And hopefully, yung nga, sabi nga nila, the time element uh, and second wind na uso comes around and you hit it right dun sa collectible nyo. So parang case in point, uh, back in the day, siguro mga 1980s, dun sa US, lalo na sa US, yung Cabbage Patch Kids. Usong-uso yun. Parang every kid had one of those. Pagka-Christmas, talagang in the millions they were being sold. But then nawala nga siya sa uso, di ba? And everybody started throwing them away or donating them to third world countries. Halos wala kang mahanap na Cabbage Patch Kids na still in the box. But now, 20, 30 years down the line, those kids na quote-unquote hindi nabigyan ng Cabbage Patch Kids, yun naman yung hinahanap nila ngayon. Yun yung part din ng another side of collecting naman. Those people or those items that medyo ipinagkait sa inyo. Diba? So, another one would be Voltes 5. The Voltes 5 series. Nung grade school tayo, talagang unahan pa yan dun sa bahay at around, I think that was 5:30 or 6 p.m. Yan na, showing na yung Voltes 5 and you'd be glued to the TV. And then, di ba, lumabas siya yung die-cast na robot na
Hmm.
ina-assemble mo pa na made by Bandai ata yun. So, those things are really, really very expensive these days. Dahil nga, number one, back in the day, hindi naman gan affordable to the common Filipino. Number two, back in the day, kokonti lang talaga yung nag-import ng mga ganong klase mga toys. You'd have to have maybe friends in Japan or maybe in Hong Kong just to buy one. Kasi usong-uso nga. So, yung tawag nga nilang parang revenge, di ba? So, back in the day, I'd remember siguro a complete set ng Voltes 5 would be, I think, around 1,000. Yeah, about 800 to 1,000 pesos. Malaking pera na ho yun, ha? Wag ho niyong ismulin yung 1,000 pesos dati. However, today, a complete set na Voltes 5, still in the box, kompleto ho siya na lahat ng stickers nandun, lahat ho ng mga add-ons nandun kay Voltes 5, would cost you between 150 to 250,000 pesos.
Wow.
If you can
Not,
find one.
not bad, huh? Not bad.
Yeah, appreciation, ha?
Oh, Peter, here's an interesting question from one of our viewers, from Gian. Two
Yeah.
questions, but I'll do the first one.
All
Do
right.
you collect NFTs?
Oh no, I don't collect NFTs. Mamaya, maikukwento ko sa inyo what I focus on recently. But sa NFTs, I'm sorry. I think you have to have somebody else to discuss NFTs. Paintings, may konti akong paintings. Just started collecting a few paintings yung itong nasa likod ko. Good painter, up and coming painter. So hopefully, in about 20 years, baka maging famous na siya. Maging well worth it yung investment.
Ito, Peter, related question from Gian. What are the pros and cons of collecting physical versus digital?
Well, for the digital, as I said, I have no idea about that. Dun sa physical, definitely, madaming mga pitfalls ho doon. Sometimes when you, quote-unquote, try to keep it in a pristine condition, however, yung lalagyan mo ng item, suddenly nagkaroon ng maybe insect or napasukan ng tubig or moisture. Ayun, especially, let's say, you're collecting comics. Nasira na yun dahil once the pages become moist and nagkadikit-dikit yan or some fungus grows on it, wala na. You can say goodbye to your collection. However, there are many other items, let's say coins and those things na more long-lasting na hindi naman talaga masyado na affect ng temperature or moisture. So, yun, as I said, collect only the things that you do enjoy and collect only the things na you personally think will appreciate in time.
Okay. Well, I can add to your question, Gian. I think one of the main differences between physical and digital is primarily track record, no? The thing is, digital collectibles, ngayon pa lang yan. So I think that's also one reason why the values of digital collectibles, let's say like NFTs, very volatile. Whereas if you're looking at physical collectibles, kumbaga, I think as Peter mentioned, this is not something that's just been around for the last 5 years. To many of us, a lot of these collectibles have been around from when we were younger, or even when our parents were younger. It just goes through cycles. For example, playing cards. Maybe before it may have been from a particular series, but the idea of playing cards, it just changes with the demands of the particular generation. So earlier, a viewer said he had Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Now you probably have Pokemon cards. Before it would have been the NBA playing cards. But the
Right.
idea of physical collectibles, matagal na yung merkadong yan. So I think one of the pros would be that the market has been already relatively more well established. So even when you get to the point that you might want to try and liquidate, it is also probably a bit easier because there's a more readily available market.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Fermin, regarding yung the part naman ng liquidation. Kasi sometimes when you're collecting, it's actually parang a borderline from collecting and hoarding. Eh, diba? So you have to also have that distinction if you're or have somebody else look in what you're doing and give you a friendly reminder. It may no longer be collecting, but actually hoarding. All right. So keep it in check. Make sure that you're collecting, hopefully, the best of the best. And hopefully, over time, really profit from it. Yung sinabi nga ni Fermin kanina, yung mga playing cards, especially sports cards like sa baseball, basketball, those things are really gone through the roof, di ba? And mandami ng mga alterations in that. However, the name of the game is, of course, having the rarest of the rare card and, of course, keeping it in pristine condition. There are actually companies that appraise and give a score dun sa mismong card that you have. So they issue a certificate, and with that certificate, you can actually sell your card at a higher price. That holds true also to coins. People have magnifying glasses dun sa eye nila to see if your coin has been used or not. Definitely, those coins that have not been in circulation, those command the highest prices. And coins, talagang lalong-lalo na yung mga may silver and gold content in them, they're really, really very collectible and actually another asset base wherein you can park your money for the long term. Kasi proven na ho siya eh. It's not anymore a fad. It's not anymore a parang uso-uso lang. Uh, those coins and stamps do appreciate in time. And if you do your research, these things, some of them even outpace the increase in value compared to stocks. It's really very interesting.
Yeah, you raise a good point, Peter. In fact, with coins, kunyari yung mga nagkaroon ng wrong spelling, di ba, na
Right.
naging limited edition, then they pulled it out from circulation. So I'm sure
Yeah.
the values are also better now. Well, here's an interesting question from Archie, who's watching us from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Your most expensive collectible, initial purchase price, when, and what's its current value?
Ah, sige, sige. Sige, I bought a car about 5 years ago, Volkswagen Beetle, with a very good story because it was imported by somebody who was working for ADB. It was his actually first car in 1972, gifted to him by his father when he graduated college. So he moved up the ranks. He used it as a daily driver in America. And he finally got an assignment, a position in ADB here in the Philippines. So just imagine the reaction of the people in customs when they opened up the 20-footer container van, only to find an air-cooled Volkswagen Beetle inside. So talagang manghang-mangha sila, sir. Why Volkswagen? People bring in Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and even Porsches, and you bring in a Volkswagen. And then sabi niya, that's my first car. So luckily, I was able to purchase the car at a very reasonable rate. And to tell you frankly, in the past 6 years, the price of that Volkswagen has actually tripled. Uh, there have been offers by some people who have seen the car, and sorry to say, it's not for sale. So, yun, one of the most expensive things I have at the moment, the initial purchase price has tripled in a matter of 5 to 6 years.
Oh, that's certainly good appreciation. And I do agree with you. That sort of appreciation can rival some asset classes.
Right,
So, well, related to that, because when you talk about collectibles, it can run the gamut of something as simple as stamps
right,
to as big as cars. So,
right.
what would you say is the appeal? I mean, why do people go into collectibles?
Yun, paulit-ulit kong sinasabi, it's something aspirational, maybe when you were a kid, or something that brings back good memories, good feelings. Kaso nga lang, you were not able to hold on to it. Now, when the time comes na you are financially capable of buying it back or buying one for yourself naman, I guess the sky's the limit. Some people, yung parang, I know of some of my friends who were able to buy Voltes 5 robots over the past few years. Sila yung mga kwento nga nila, kami yung mga nandun sa side habang yung ibang classmate namin naglalaro ng Voltes 5. Kami yung nagtutuloy yung laway namin. And now that we are in our 40s, 50s, definitely, hindi na namin iniisip kung magkano yan. We want one. So, yun yung mga drivers ng price. So, going back to yung cars, di ba? When I talked about cars a few moments ago. Kasi most of the things that I collect, especially dun sa cars, is related to Volkswagen. So, years back, kung alam niyo yung Volkswagen na parang bus, yung tawag nilang Volkswagen bus or combi, people mover siya in many alterations like a camper, delivery van, pickup, those things. They were not collectible. Definitely not collectible. You could pick up one Volkswagen combi back in siguro mga early 90s hanggang early 2000s for 30,000, 40,000 pesos. Really good, running, reliable. You can use it daily. Na combi would be around 80 to about 120,000 pesos. However, yung nga, siguro mga year 2010, there was a famous American comedian. I think it was Steinfeld. He attended one car auction, and for some reason, he suddenly had that itch na siguro nasabi niya, nung bata ako, mayroon kaming Volkswagen Combi and I want to buy one. So the usual price of a fully restored Combi in America would be running between 10, maximum maybe $20,000. He pushed the price of that particular Combi na camper to I think 100 or $120,000. And the rest is history. Kahit dito sa Pilipinas, a Combi na basket case, what we call it, kalas-kalas yung katawan, hindi kompleto, not running, minsan wala pang registration. The cheapest that you can buy these days is about 150,000 pesos. So just imagine if you would have hoarded or collected all of those combis who were just rotting at the side of the streets before. Now, you would be the one laughing.
Well, I think, you know what, that example of yours underscores, Peter, is that when you get to the point where you will try to sell it, you don't really need to convince everybody. You just need to convince one person. And if
Right,
that one person agrees to your price or maybe an even better price, then who's to question his decision, right?
right.
Related to that, here's an interesting question from Oscar Galang for you.
All right.
How long does it take for you to sell the collection? Or related to your earlier point, do you plan to sell? Or is it just buy and hold or buy and sell once the value has appreciated?
Well, it really depends on you. For me, since the collection is something that I do enjoy, I usually hold on to it. However, sometimes there is a crazy offer that you can't resist, di ba? Be very wary about that dun sa mga nagko-collect. Sometimes, mga kaibigan or barkada, niloko ko lang na, oh, sige, bilhin ko yung, anto, let's say, yun nga, balik tayo dun sa Volkswagen. Sige, bilhin ko yung Volkswagen mo at 500,000. Tapos biglang niloko mo, hindi, I'm selling it for 1 million. Don't give out a price na mapapasubo ka. Kasi there are people these days na talagang money is no object. You'd really be surprised. There have been a few sale of vehicles and art collectibles na have really gone through the roof and made some collectors really happy and some of them talagang medyo nagsisi bakit they accepted the offer. So, yun. In terms of saleability, definitely yung mga collectibles will definitely be sold at a higher price than your purchase price. So, it really depends kung how much of a profit you want to take. Sometimes there are other people who, especially in a community na parang pare-pareho kayo ng interest, you can establish some relationship wherein you can actually pawn your collectible. Acceptable ho yan dun sa ibang mga tropa. You just have to sign a small piece of paper that you borrow money in exchange for a collectible, and that's it. Actually, there was one time nakapunta ako sa isang tambunting na pawn shop. There was an old BMW R69 na motorcycle na pinon nila. Tapos tinanong ko yung manager ng tambunting. Sabi ko, ito, for sale na ba to? Na rematado na ba to? Ay, sir, hindi ho. Kasi every time yung may-ari nagkakaroon ng problema sa pera, yun ho, sinasangla ho yan. Eh, tinutubos naman ho palagi. So, sorry po. But just in case, malalaman naman ho ninyo kasi lalagyan ho yan ng for sale sign. So, yun. Those are the things that may amaze you na, really? Itong mga collectibles actually can be pawned? Yes. Some within certain communities among the collectors, you can pawn your collection.
I have a follow-up question to that, Peter. Because let's for example, your earlier statement on playing cards.
Right.
Now, clearly, with the interest now in playing cards for sports, let's say baseball, American football, soccer, basketball, there will be cards which have more value than other cards, right? Let's say, like,
Right.
if you had a Kobe Bryant card,
Right.
certainly more valuable now because he passed away. Are
Right.
there certain, let's say, websites where you would look to help you in your research to determine whether, okay, if I wanted to go into this collectible market,
Mm-hmm.
which ones are probably in demand?
Well, yung nga, yung sabi mo nga, the famous and well-known athletes, definitely. Parang, kumbaga sa stock market, blue chip yun, di ba? However, I do have a friend, so kung pwede ko yung mag-subscribe dun sa YouTube channel niya, si Attorney B as in boy. He collects basketball playing cards. So when Luka Doncic, the guy who
Yes,
came here in the
Dallas
Philippines,
Mavericks. Yeah.
yes, Dallas Mavericks. When he was just scouted out, parang out of the blue, kasi kilala ko to si Attorney B for a long time. Out of the blue, sabi niya, yan yung i-collect ko. So sabi ko, hey man, unknown pa yan. Baka ma-aksidente o mapila yan dun sa first year niya. Eh, bakit collect ka ng collect? Sabi niya, hindi, trust me. Talagang winner to. So yun, he started collecting cards, jerseys, all kinds of memorabilia of Luka. And now I think his collection would be conservatively 7 figures. Luka pa lang yun.
Wow.
So, yun. It's also having that experience or that eye for the upswing, yung tawag nga nila, di ba? Yung parang pupusta ka na ito, magiging sikat to na player. So, for those who are more conservative, I guess, dun sa mga blue chip or yung mga tried and tested na mga athletes. However, if you're really in the game, you know the stats, you know the possibilities of these players suddenly become real superstars. Yun talagang jackpot. Yung kumbaga dun sa Volkswagen, yung mga tao na nag-hoard ng mga kombi, today, jackpot ho sila.
Well, let's talk, for example, about that painting you made reference to, which is behind you.
Right.
Oh, you decided to collect that painting. Why?
Yes.
Parang, what did you see, and why do you think it will appreciate in value?
Okay. To give you a short history, this is by the painter si Odosis. May look strange, bakit may mga taong nakahiga, may taong nakatayo, etc., etc., di ba? So his perspective kasi, sayang kasi if you only buy one painting, right? And your friends come over and see the same painting over and over again. However, if you tilt the painting, Oops, sandali, I have to stand up. Ibang-iba na yung perspective niya. So yun yung parang dun sa series of paintings that he has done, ito yung parang ginawa niya. This was from his second solo show. And recently he had his third solo show. Yung third solo show niya, actually, even before the ribbon cutting dun sa gallery where he was featured, sold out na. So I think this painting will be quite valuable in the future. Maybe not in 5 years, but maybe 10 to 15 years. So iba yung perspective niya dun sa art.
Related to that, since here for paintings, we're talking about 10, 15 years. So let's say, what are the collectibles which, in your experience, appreciate in value quicker? Because let's say,
Oh,
like you mentioned, let's say the car will take about 5 years, a painting, maybe 10 to 15.
okay.
So are there some collectibles na let's say within 2 years?
For those people looking at getting into this collection or collectible market with that in mind, I would suggest na to try to look at a market that is not yet that mature, number one. Number two, uh, are items of that certain market available here in the Philippines? And then go through them. So what I mean by go through them, sabihin natin, looking for, then nauso na rin yan, pedal cars eh. Anyway, sabihin natin pedal cars. Maybe you could go to different junk shops. Ayun, ganun ka din ka sira ulo si Mr. Umson minsan. No? I've been to many junk shops na literally, as long as it's metal, it's all the same price. Whether it's a collectible or not, it's all the same price. Ranging between 15 to 18 pesos per kilo. All right? So, what do I buy in the junk shop? Yung mga paa ng sewing machine. So, doon sa junk shop, that's just plain old metal. 10 to 18 pesos per kilo. However, for the trained eye, especially the old ones, yung mga turn of the century na singer, yung paa pa lang niyan will go between 3 to 5,000 pesos for a complete set. And then you upcycle it, yung tawag nga nilang i-upcycle it. Kasi if you bought it per kilo and then you sell it for 3 to 5,000, maybe happy ka na, di ba? However, punta ka dun sa neighborhood na nagbebenta din ng mga old wood. So, magpaputol ka ng old wood and put it on top. Then your 3 to 5,000 peso na paa ng singer sewing machine suddenly becomes, depending on the wood and depending on how well it's presented, 10 to 15,000 peso na coffee table. So there are many ways to skin the cat dun sa tinatawag nga nila. So that on a good weekend, you can do that. Yung tinatawag na nilang pag-upcycle ng mga things that are collectible, but at the same time, to the untrained eye, it is just junk.
That's a very, very nice example. But I think, yun nga, it just underscores how getting into collectibles, it really has to start with it being a passion. Because you're right, to
Right,
the untrained eye, it looks like metal. But to somebody na, let's say, who has been following, for example, this type of, let's say, looking at sewing machines, they would know that's not just a piece of metal, no? So you're right. It has to be something that you follow, and it's not
right.
something that can be, it's a passing fancy. You
Yep,
can, but certainly it's not going to, it's not likely to translate into the success that collectibles, that collectors in collectibles have.
yep.
Anyway, we've been here for almost an hour, Peter. I am
Yes.
sure there will be other questions from the audience. If they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get in touch with you or just to find out more, get your thoughts on possible items, how can they reach you?
So yun, I'll give out my cell phone number, 0917
Ayan, to our viewers. So, in case there are people out there who are interested to learn more about the collectibles market, now you know where to find Peter. So, again, thank you very much to our viewers for joining us tonight. We look forward to welcoming you at our session next week. But for the meantime, this is Fermin from Museigen signing off for now. Thank you very much, Peter, for gracing us and sharing your time and insights with us. Bye now.